Well, that week was weird.
How weird?
The fact that Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, and Andy Dalton were top 5 quarterbacks this week, that weird.
Yeah, NFL was drunk. And the hangover cure? Waivers. Let's jump into it. And welcome back to a Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono, and
I'm your host, Chris. And
he's back.
Hey, I'm back, guys. And what a weird week to have me back. And this was a weird fantasy week. There's, just terrible offenses, really bad matchups, trap games left and right. You had the Giants win a freaking game.
Yeah,
So, weird.
listen, at the end of the day, a lot of
Jets
players.
beat the Patriots.
Good week for New York?
Yeah, good week for New York.
Well, I will say at the end of the day, a lot of players in fantasy that were not projected to score scored, and a lot of guys that you wanted to score on your teams, your number ones and your number two receivers, your number one running backs, didn't score. Now, that's not everybody. I mean, people did have good weeks here and there. Aaron Jones, Saquon, Kyron, just to name a few. Your stud. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, they had good weeks. But quarterbacks, I mean, you're talking about the top-tier quarterbacks we just mentioned, if you heard in our intro, Daniel Jones, you had
Dalton.
Andy Dalton, you had Sam Darnold, like guys that were top 10 because of opportunities possibly. We didn't know where Andy Dalton was going to land, and then at the end of the day, these guys are your top.
If the red rifle
6.
is out there, you start him, and he already got the bid for week 4. So this is going to be, this is an interesting week because this is the time of the season where you start to see not only some players thin out like in the waiver wire, but you're seeing players drop down from people's teams that they are either cutting bait with. I mean, last week we had Deontay Johnson in our league get dropped down because someone went and picked him up because they had no future. And then what happens during the week? Bryce gets benched. Andy Dalton's the starter, and now Deontay Johnson figures to be a major centerpiece of what this offense wants to do.
He's at least a flex play every single week now, with the opportunity of being a wide receiver too.
Yeah,
in a good matchup for them, in a bad defensive matchup, he has an opportunity to finish as a low-end wide receiver 1.
Yeah, so not only are you looking for the waiver ads and the priority waiver ads on day 1, but definitely keep an eye on who is dropped from other teams, and then go and try to maybe pick up one of those players, because someone might be dealing with injuries and have to drop someone down because they need a player to start for that week, and you just got a free player that everyone else would want to hit up on waiver wires if he was available in the beginning of the week. So, I mean, some of those guys this week that we'll talk about, Bucky Irving, I mean, some leagues already have him. If he got dropped down, definitely go and pick him back up.
Like here at the end of the day, most of the guys we're going to talk about are going to be 30 to 40% owned in sleeper leagues right now. Only one of them we're going to mention is above 60% owned.
Yeah.
And even that person needs to still be owned, and we'll talk about that. So
sure.
Why don't we just jump into it? Let's kick off our waivers here.
Right on into it.
Start with the quarterbacks, and start with Sam Darnold. Week 2, he's been QB4. Now, there's obviously 4 other quarterbacks that still have to play tonight as of Monday at 5:45. We have a game here in about an hour starting, but he's 38% owned. He was QB4 week 2, QB3, and week 3 was QB6. He has 24 to 28 attempts a game, so not high volume. That's the caveat to him there. But with the bad quarterback of play across the board, he's efficient with it enough that he's been able to get 2 touchdowns a game this season.
Well, I mean, you have him. He just is. It's time to jump on the Vikings train. They're a for real team, and he just threw 4 touchdowns yesterday. Looked fantastic. I mean, you have Justin Jefferson, who is the best wide receiver in the game.
Yeah,
on the outside, and all of a sudden, Naylor is becoming a thing. And you should have seen the waiver wire episode last week. If you did, then you should know that Jalen Naylor was a guy that we recommended going and picking up and stashing. He is, as long as Addison is out, he should be played every week.
Yeah.
He's getting enough volume there. And what's great with Sam Darnold is he doesn't have a huge rushing upside, but he's not rushing for anything. He's an athletic quarterback. But you have a receiving back with Aaron Jones. You have Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the game. You have Naylor, who's stepping up. And wait till Addison gets back. Oh, wait till Hawkinson gets back. This is a guy that you should absolutely go and own. If he's available in your league, going at him.
Yeah, if you also in a league where you have a IR spot where you can go grab Hawkinson and put him on your IR spot, if you have Addison on the waivers because somebody who is Addison owner dropped him, Addison is better than Naylor. Addison was a first-round draft pick. This guy is athletically better. If Naylor can be scoring touchdowns and get the targets, Addison, I'm being an Addison owner myself, that makes me excited as at least a flex play on a week-to-week basis with this offense. And again, doesn't need a lot of volume for him to be efficient in the way he's been, especially touchdown efficient.
Well, the offense is good, so he's going to get the opportunity. So whether it's running or throwing, he's going to have the opportunity to go and score some points. And yeah, he's been really efficient for this up and down play that we've seen from all the quarterbacks. He's been the guy that's kind of coasting, and him, Derek Carr, have really good performances throughout the season. So let's talk about kind of my favorite pick from last week.
Well,
before we get into that, let's get some more Sam Darnold information.
Well, no, the only thing I want to say about Sam Darnold is this offense, we're seeing a floor for him because this offense has been running the ball really well. Wait till there's a game where Aaron Jones struggles for any reason, and they've got to throw the ball 38 to 40 times to win a ball game. If he's passing the way he's passing now, he had 28 attempts last past week and ended up having 4 touchdowns. I think there's a higher ceiling than what we're seeing here.
I think so too. No, really, really great performance from him, and there's only more upside for when they have to shoot out.
All right, so let's get into your favorite pick here.
My favorite pick is Andy Dalton from last week.
7% owned.
Yeah, and I absolutely loved him. Last year when he stepped in for Bryce Young when Bryce Young got hurt. I mean, he threw the ball 52 times in a game. They let him go out there and sling it, and he's running this offense the way it should be run. You think Baker Mayfield from last year, how he was able to transition under Dave Canales, and now he's there with the Red Rifle himself, who's going to chuck it. And they have weapons. I mean, I know Thielen goes down in the game, but they have other weapons. Deontay Johnson,
Leggett stepped up too in a couple big plays. Yeah.
So, and I think Chuba Hubbard should absolutely be owned by every team.
Yeah. Right now. Well, yeah, we said that very early on, even week 1.
Yeah, he should have been drafted.
Be
but regardless, I mean, Andy Dalton looked really, really good. He comes in there and instantly takes command. First drive down there is going in and driving the field and scoring. I mean, so that was my lock of the week last week. I know I talked to you about it multiple times throughout the week. I said this is going to be my upset. I know I spread it around like hotcakes. I was like, Carolina's my pick for this week.
Well, the one thing
unfortunately, Tampa screwed me.
The one thing I will say about Andy Dalton too is in the 2 games he did start for Carolina, like you mentioned, he's been over 300 yards and he's been 2 or more touchdowns. This team needed that spark. This defense is not a bad defense. Yeah, they got rid of some big pieces of their defense. Brian Burns is gone, but this defense has still been able to stunt offenses and drives. Their problem is they can't sustain a third down drive. They can't convert third downs with Bryce Young. All of a sudden, they're converting third downs with Andy Dalton. That was the biggest change, I think, there is the third down conversion on there, and then their defense in return is able to step up.
It's not just that; it's the shots downfield. They're actually taking shots downfield.
Correct.
So they're able to keep the defense off, and we'll see. We'll see what Dalton looks like this upcoming week. And I think he's more than a 1-week replacement. They're not just going to say bad Bryce and sit down on the bench. Like, this team wants to win, and I think that they're going to keep building around what the pieces they have there right now. This is a winnable division.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
I know New Orleans kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I think they're going to come back down to earth a little bit.
But we saw New Orleans lose to a Philly team who couldn't stop the pass, and they stopped the pass.
Yeah.
And we saw the Falcons find ways to either barely win or barely lose games. Like, they're beatable.
They're Kirk Cousins.
And Tampa Bay just lost to Denver.
Yeah.
And Bo Nix.
Yeah.
Who didn't throw a touchdown pass.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot to do in this division. My favorite one here this week, and this is in more deeper leagues, especially Superflex, but you can't knock Daniel Jones. Like just like last year for the Giants, you take that first game away, you take this first game away too, and they've looked like a much better team. For weeks 2 and 3, he's been a top 8 quarterback so far. We'll see what happens with these last 4 quarterbacks here. The floor is at 28 attempts with him. That's his floor. He's thrown for over 40 attempts in a game already this season. That's the one thing is the Giants are going to be in game script for passing. Because you have Singletary just running the ball efficiently enough to get first downs and get in the end zone.
He looked good yesterday. The defense looked great.
And that's the one thing is the defense is going to keep this offense in the game. And even if they're losing, you're passing. And he has Malik Neighbors on his team. He has
Right.
Wan'Dale on the short routes. Theo Johnson, if he starts catching the ball, is open. And you still have people like Tyrone Tracy out the backfield. He's got options. So he's thrown for back-to-back games of 2 touchdowns, and he's still averaging 6 rushes a game himself. And when you break open a couple of those, he's confident with that knee. That adds more value with the rushing ability.
He's just long. Like, he has those long, weird strides.
Always has.
I know.
He's a tall
when
man.
he's running and scrambling out of the backfield, it doesn't look like he's moving that fast. And so really not until he gets into open space, you're like, oh, no, you're just galloping.
Yeah.
You're just galloping down the field. Like, you're not
You're
even
a
like,
Clydesdale.
Yeah. But, yeah, he has a lot of upside to him. He's a guy that we talked about. I mean, I know I talked about in the preseason about, hey, he could have a resurgent year this year, and he's a sneaky late-round quarterback to get as a backup that with weapons around him as a flyer, it doesn't look that bad so far. I mean, top 10 quarterback finishes.
Especially with injuries that can happen this season. We saw how many starting quarterbacks last year due to injuries.
And the fact is they don't have a workhorse back on Saquon anymore. So they're not going to just force feed and run the ball. So they've got to be able to throw it. They have Neighbors. Neighbors looks great and fantastic so far and through 3 games, especially the last 2 games when they really started to force feed the ball to him. He looks good. He looks like he's getting open. Red zone opportunities, great. It looked good. I'll say watching this is like Daniel Jones' stat line was probably propped up by really good wide receiver play from the Neighbors.
But that's what you need. I mean, look. Here's the only thing I'll say. And
he should have had a touchdown pass to Theo Johnson.
Yep.
That he missed.
Okay.
Both Neighbors touchdowns he had to make a great play on.
But they were also great throws too. Like only person could catch the ball was Neighbors for both of them.
Yeah.
So, but here's the one thing I want to say about Daniel Jones, and we'll move on here because I don't think we need to take that much time for him. If you think about Dable with Josh Allen, and I know we've made these comparisons. He's got Daniel Jones. Well, yeah, first season Daniel Jones had a great season because of his rushing ability.
Yeah, but that was all right. But that was year 3. We're not in year 3 for Daniel Jones anymore.
No, we're with year 3 with Dable.
We're in year 3 with Dayball.
So this is what I want to say is you don't have, you said it perfectly. You don't have Saquon here anymore. It is now on the shoulders of Daniel Jones. And I think he's going to step up, and I think you're going to see the growth jump by getting receiver just like Josh Allen got Diggs, and to see that bump up in his efficiency and production through the air.
Sure.
And I think that's why I like him here for the long run, because he's going to have some very favorable matchups where your starter may not have the favorable matchups, and he's going to beat your starter in points because consistency is what I think you're going to see across the board for him the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Let's move on to running backs. You just saw it disappear here on the screen, but it'll come back here. But our big one here is
Give
for
us
your
30
team.
seconds, and we'll get you on back there.
Your running back here, Braelon Allen, back up, 46% owned in sleeper leagues. He has had 18 rushes in 2 weeks and 7 targets total. He has been able to convert things into touchdowns and has looked very good and very efficient on the ground. Talk to me. What do you like about him, and why do we have him as a big waiver ad here?
I mean, this is a guy that should be owned. He might be one of my favorite. I think he might be the best handcuff in the league. Yeah. Because all that work that Brees is getting to, he's going to get, and he looks great doing it. They really do have like a. I think that this might turn into a 1A, 1B situation. Brees is clearly the dominant 1A.
Well, they're both being efficient. They're both good.
Allen looks really good back there. He looks physical. I mean, he's running over defenders like it's nothing. The kid's 20 years old.
Yeah.
He gets good quality touches, too. They're giving him red zone touches. So it's not just a change of pace. Like they're designing plays where both of them are in the backfield.
Yeah, he may even get a drive here and there to spell after a long run from Breece Hall, or maybe even they decide okay, let's save Breece for the end of the game. The one thing I like about him is we talk about Algier and how much we like him as a handcuff to Bijan. The difference is Braelon Allen can do everything that Breece Hall can do. Well, the playbook is like there's no special packages for him compared to we talk about Bijan and you talk about Algier. Algier can't do everything.
Well, the one surprising thing is that the fact that Braelon Allen's been involved in the passing game as much as he has been.
Huge.
And so even from a PPR standard, I know we are the standard, but if you're looking at it from PPR, I think he's valuable there too.
I think he's more valuable there because
he's
7 targets,
he's getting 3 receptions a game,
and
like,
he's kept. Yeah, I think he's 6 for 7 in the past 2 weeks,
and he's doing damage with it. So I mean, this is he was one of my guys. I know we talked about it here. It's one of our bets that we have going on, but he's going to have 10 touchdowns this season, and it doesn't look that far fetched.
No, it doesn't.
That he can get 10 touchdowns this season. And so I love Braelon Allen. If he's available in your league, go and pick him up. He's not just a flex play, but if anything happened to Breeze,
he could have RB1.
He has RB1 potential.
Yeah, potential on that team. Let's talk about Bucky Irving next here. Bucky Irving, 44% owned right now in sleeper leagues. His yards per carry are significantly better than Rachaad White. Rachaad White still has I can't do a lot with little. He needs a lot of volume to get it done. Bucky does not need that. I mean, 6.8 yards per carry week 1, 3.1 week 2, so drop down, but back up to 7.7 week 3. He's had 9 carries, and in the last couple games, he's had 3 targets as well. I think his usage is going to go up. Tampa Bay needs a spark in that backfield to continue these drives, and we saw what happened when you take the run away with Rachaad White. The drives that they had good opportunities with were your Bucky Irving big chunk runs too.
I think this was the Denver defense playing really well. They
that
played
too.
him really tough, and I think Bucky was a better back against that defense, more of a slashing back. He looked good. He was breaking a lot of tackles in the backfield. Do I think Rachaad White's workload is going to get cut into? Yes, I do.
Yeah,
and that's sad to say, but he's going to get work cut into him. Bucky's going to get efficient targets. He's not on the level of like Achane was last season or Keith Mitchell was last season.
Not even Braelon Allen this season quite yet.
But is he enough to own there, especially if he's taking 9 touches, getting 90 total yards, and possibility of a touchdown? I mean, we got to see where the touchdown numbers are because the offense just looked bad last week, and he was the one bright spot of that, which makes me really hesitant to go and jump on his bandwagon, is because the rest of the offense is going to go back to normal. And how much is he factored into that at that point?
Yeah. I like him too at the opportunity. I don't wish for injuries on anybody, but he could have a full-on workload if there is an injury to Rachaad White. And at the end of the day, too, we know this offense likes to pass in the red zone and pass near the goal line a lot because you've got weapons through the air. But he's a weapon through the air too as well, and is pretty good at it. So I don't know. He's a guy that I'm going to grab and stash and see what the next 2 weeks look like because it could just improve for you.
Yeah, and if you can afford to stash him, go and stash him.
The next 2 are for deep leagues, and we'll just touch on them real quick. Roschon Johnson, who was the best bag in yards per carry and had the most power behind him in this past week. DeAndre Swift.
Are you ready to jump off that train?
I was only on that train for 1 week.
Are you ready to jump off that train?
I'm already off of it.
Okay.
Right. I was off it at halftime.
Okay.
But again, Roschon Johnson, best yards per carry. He seemed to have the best spark in the backfield. Herbert did nothing. Swift did nothing. I think he outpaced Swift and had 2 less carries than him. So
Roschon looked good.
Yeah.
And
he's a good pass catching back.
The problem is I don't know. I know we have 2 Bears on kind of our ads for waivers this week. The second guy is under tight ends. You're seeing him pop up on the screen.
It's a streamer opportunity.
But I can't believe we're saying you shouldn't own Bears. I mean, I can. Caleb Williams looks awful. Doesn't look like he can command an NFL offense whatsoever. But hey, I don't know. I was just saying that all offseason since he got drafted. But that's just me. No, Caleb Williams doesn't look good, and until he actually does, there's a lot of wasted plays. That's the problem with this offense. There's so many wasted plays where he scrambles around, runs time off it, and then ends up throwing the ball like not even catchable or make it like believable. He just hucks it out of bounds.
Yeah. Well, I think the wasted plays can go away if you can establish your run game,
but they can't.
They can't. But if Roschon Johnson is the guy who he did look pretty good at times during the last game.
He did, but
and then you bring somebody in like DeAndre Swift, you do a pitch play out to the left-hand side and you get negative yards, or a toss-back play to him on a wheel route of the backfield, and guess what? Negative yards on a 4th down. So I think Roschon is somebody that in a deep league, I'm grabbing and I'm stashing because somebody's going to have to run the ball there, and it's going to be the most efficient guy.
Yeah, and they're going to have to change the scheme up a little bit because Swift is just not getting it done in that scheme. So
Period.
Bring in Roschon, and he looked good on the runs that he did have.
He looked good last
he's more
year,
physical.
too.
He's a lot more physical.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you need when your offensive line is not opening up those small crevices that you need. Swift is not breaking tackles. He's getting caught up in them, and he's getting taken down for short yardage. He's really inefficient with his usage. Unlike the next guy we're going to talk about,
Tyler Badie.
He looked really good, explosive. I
Yeah.
mean, and there wasn't a lot there. There hasn't been a lot to write home about with Javonte Williams this season.
Yeah. Even Jaleel McLaughlin just did not until that one pitch play where he made the Tampa Bay defender over pursue and break his ankles, and that just was bad defense and tackling by Tampa. McLaughlin, you take that away, he had a terrible day too. This offense cannot run the ball, and Badie is the first one to really show that spark. And this was like McLaughlin of last year. And I think at the end of the day, Peyton's already come out saying they're looking for a spark in that backfield.
Yeah.
And I don't think Peyton, just like I don't think Eberflus is going to have a problem giving opportunities to a running back that's going to show more promise and spark.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they need that from their offenses. So if they need that piece from them, he's going to get more work. He looked good on the touches that he did have. He had the longest rushing attempt for the last 2 years for Denver.
Yep.
So if you're going to have that breakaway speed that can flip the field, you're going to give those guys more touches.
Is he this year's Philip Lindsay? No, I'm just throwing out there because it was Denver.
I don't think so.
But I just want to. This is a really deep league, so and deep stash pickup too. We want to make sure we put that in there because some of these names may not be on your waivers.
I'm still staying away from Denver.
Hey, listen, coming off a win, you never know. I like Sean Payton. They can scheme up some stuff.
I mean,
that are interesting.
Knicks looked efficient throwing the ball. There's a lot of short yardage stuff.
That's all you need.
I get it.
You win a game.
So from a PPR standpoint, those guys are really good to own. Josh Reynolds has some value there.
Sutton has value.
Little Jordan Humphrey was getting a lot of touches.
Just wait till they get Troy Franklin on the field.
It's not going to happen. I mean, he's been on the field, but it's not going to happen.
Let's move on to wide receivers here. Let's start with the big one of the week. Your wide receiver
a lot of caution
one
on this one.
Yeah,
a lot of caution.
But Jauan Jennings, 44% owned, massive game with 3 touchdowns.
Absolutely.
Now this was without Kittle and without Debo, so that's where the caution is. He fell into McCaffrey, but he fell into a great situation. Those other guys are going to come back. Now, has he supplanted himself as the third wide receiver option? Is he going to get snaps even with those guys in there? Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. But is he going to be startable from week to week? That's where the caution is, and I don't think he's going to be. And in fact, we could see Ayuk turn around and have a game like Jauan Jennings just did this past week because we saw you could get 3 touchdowns to Jennings. You're not winning a ball game. You're not winning a ball game if you don't get Jordan Mason going. You're not winning a ball game if you get Ayuk going. So I think there's a lot of things in this that came out of that game. It's like, yeah, it's great. He's a startable target as a wide receiver 2 flex opportunity.
Well, there's a reason that I didn't really draft a lot of, and not that I don't like them, but Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall. I didn't draft any of them, not in best balls. I don't think this is the season for them to emerge. Jauan Jennings, they re-signed him to an extension before the season started. In fact, they got his deal done before Ayuk's deal, putting an emphasis that they wanted him as a wide receiver 3. And they paid him...
Or 2 if Ayuk was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ayuk is going to get more involved. Obviously, Kittle and Debo not being there was a huge factor. Yes, you should own him. He just went freaking absolutely nuclear. He can throw up those numbers. He's that good of a receiver. However, when this team is healthy... he's not going to get these kind of opportunities.
No, he's an injury opportunity there. And we saw in the playoffs in the past, he is a go-to guy. He's had great games too as well, even with those guys there. But it's a shot in the dark. It's not necessarily like, oh, you could expect heavy target share there. Now, somebody who's getting heavy target share for his team this past week is Quentin Johnston. I put him on this list because he's only 63% owned. I think he still needs to be owned, but there's caution with him as well. And the caution is not his play. The caution is his quarterback.
Yep.
And his quarterback may not play this week. And who knows what the implications are going to be.
Re-injured that sprained ankle, so he might be out 3 weeks.
Who knows? Yeah.
So do we like him? No. But I think this is a good opportunity to go and grab a lot of Quentin Johnston, or he might be a guy, he's only 63% owned. He's a guy you absolutely should keep your eye on. If he does get dropped in your league,
Oh, yeah.
you can go and pick him up for free because he's not going to go and pick him up next week later this week when he gets dropped because no one's going to want him for the next 2 weeks without Justin Herbert.
Yeah, without Herbert.
So, yeah. I mean, I like QJ for he's getting good opportunities. He's getting downfield opportunities, and he's converting.
He's great in a standard scoring league, too, because he's targeted in the red zone by Herbert, which is great. He's targeted within the 20, and that's what you want from a wide receiver, one from that team. Some other guys are getting targeted in the end zone, but he's been the one to come down with the ball more often on his targets in the end zone. Let's talk about another Giant with Wan'Dale Robinson, 34% owned. He's the number 2 target for the Giants. And again, we're talking about high volume passing offense because of game script and because they just don't have a workhorse running back like some of these other teams do. He's had 24 targets in 3 games. That's a boatload of targets. Now, he's got a low ADOT, so he's got small, short passes. He can do stuff with it afterwards. He's not the downfield threat that we saw last year at the end of the year because he doesn't need to be because you have Hyatt or Slayton and then you've got Malik Neighbors. But that doesn't mean, especially in PPR, you get 24 targets in PPR. That's like wide receiver 1 numbers, wide receiver 2 numbers.
Well, that's what I'm saying is do I like him in a standard league? No, but I do really like him in a PPR setting because he's going to have a couple weeks. Like he's not going to score touchdowns every game. He's not going to be Malik Neighbors. But the games that he does score touchdowns, can he get 5? In PPR, he's already loading up on targets.
Correct.
So he's going to have a really good week on, probably, I would say 4 to 5 more weeks this year where he's probably going to end up hitting in that 15-plus range in PPR formats. I don't think from a standard format, he's that valuable to own because you're going to have to hit on those. Yes, he's getting the volume on it, but the back-end numbers are not that high. He's not getting 14 targets for 75 yards.
No, the difference being that you look at some of these receivers like Gabe Davis, you look at Christian Kirk, like some of these other guys that from the Jaguars, they're not producing for you in the flex position like you expect or wide receiver 2 position because the passing volume is just not there for that team.
Right.
This is a team that does have the passing volume, especially coming Thursday night against the Cowboys. You better believe they're going to try and get the ball out quick, especially. So like this is one where. Am I saying start Wan'Dale Robinson? No. But if you have injuries to your team and you've got injuries to receivers and they're not back yet and you need a flex play, here's a high-volume opportunity flex play on an offense that's going to pass the ball a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to take a look at like the final matchups and where I rank those guys. But, yeah, he's up there. I mean, again, I own him on a couple of best ball teams because of this reason, because he's going to get high volume. And I don't really care about the yardage on that, but the weeks he does score touchdowns, his numbers are going to go through the roof. So perfect bet from a best ball format. I'm probably staying away from him. Again, I think that there's some better options. I'd probably take the top 2 guys. And yeah, you're right. Like he's going to get more opportunity and volume with the Giants than maybe Gabe Davis will. But Gabe Davis, I think, has a higher upside for touchdown potential.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm not taking that off the table and away from it. This is more of a deeper league or, again, like injury-riddled league, and your league is on top of it like ours is, where you really don't have options on waivers, and these are the guys you have to take because nobody's dropping anybody, and on top of that, everybody's already snagged up.
I mean, I'd like to say, like, we don't have them on this list, but honorable mention is there's 2 guys on the Steelers offense that I would absolutely go and take a look at. They're available. And it's first Roman Wilson, and I think that you should absolutely see if he's available in your league.
Coming off the ankle injury from preseason.
Yep, and if he is going to have a timetable of another 2 weeks, Calvin Austin, I think, is a guy you can definitely go and stream for the next 2 weeks here. I think his home run ability is there. They're starting to target him a lot more, and they're starting to design plays to get him into space for him to be like creating matchup nightmares for people.
Well, they have to because you can't like. The George Pickens hyper-targeting is not going to win you ball games.
Right. And so we thought it was going to be like kind of an uptick for Freiermuth, but I think when Roman Wilson comes back, I think his numbers, and this is a good opportunity to go and grab something like that. So honorable mention.
I like Roman Wilson. He was one of my preseason favorite guys there. Let's talk about the last one here is Darnell Mooney, who back-to-back games of 7+ targets. He has a tough matchup against New Orleans coming up here, so I'll say that. But I think Kirk Cousins, the way he's passing the ball and looking, he faced a tough Chiefs defense and was still able to spread the ball around, complete passes. They should have won that game. But again, Mooney's been a guy that they're scheming in, little screen passes and swing passes out the backfield. They have him in motion a lot, which benefits him as well. And I said it early on. I called him a sleeper like this season to you, and I think he can be.
And I told what was my response to that is that I thought Ray McCloud was going to kind of be that guy. And the funny thing is they both kind of are.
Yeah, they're both being used in the offense.
And they're both being used very similarly in very similar style routes, very similar style of like schemes where they're trying to get them the ball in space. They're trying to use them in like screens in the backfield. A lot of motion from both of them. So, yeah, I like Mooney. I think his production the last 2 weeks has been there. But I still think Ray McCloud is a guy that you can, if you don't get Mooney, you can go and get him. They're very close in terms of value.
The only thing I'll say about the difference between the two of them is Mooney with Kirk Cousins. When Kirk Cousins has time, Mooney's going to get the ball more often than not. But
Yes.
Ray is going to, like, if you have a tough defense, I could see him just dinking and dunking to Ray, and that's why we saw week 1 Ray had a great time.
Right.
And then the past 2 weeks where he's had a little bit more time in that pocket, able to throw it, and they've gotten some.
Yeah, Mooney's been there.
But I will say he does have a good playoff schedule. The Atlanta so far against. For wide receivers, it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's something too to stash here. I know it's only week 3, but it's never too early to plan if you've got your starters.
Don't get overconfident.
Let's do quick tight end streamers for this week before we hit the defenses and close it up for you guys. Tight end streamer number 1 is Cole Kmet. He's 47% owned here. His snaps have increased weeks 2 and 3 significantly just due to Keenan Allen being out and who's probably going to be out again this week. He's had 16 targets in both those games too as well. Again, rookie quarterback's favorite position, usually tight end. So I like Cole Kmet. He's been a good streamable tight end for years now. I suspect him to be the same thing. And then Tyler Conklin, 14% owned. I mean, your team here, he is a target hog because he's open because of the threats around him, and Aaron Rodgers is going to find the open man.
And what I like about both these guys and these types of tight ends too is they are not just like short volume, like dump down valves. They actually go and run post patterns. A lot of the big plays from the last 2 weeks were down the middle.
They scheme them open too as well.
And Kmet's been great on the sideline too. But that medium deep route, both these guys can run those routes. So I like that. Relief valve was the word I was looking for. Couldn't figure out the word relief. It's been a stressful Monday so far.
Well, I agree with you for relief valve for Tyler Conklin. If you've watched any of the games too, when Aaron Rodgers got out of the pocket this past week, you saw him find Conklin when things broke down.
Conklin and Lazard.
Yeah. But that's just Lazard and his presence on the team and being in the rapport they've had, but Conklin just being a good tight end. And then 2 streamable teams for defense. We don't have them up here. Chris and I were sitting there contemplating a little bit because it's tough when you're only in 12-team leagues to find another 2 teams to stream. But I'll tell you what, LA Rams, good matchup this week. And Miami Dolphins defense. I know the Dolphins offense didn't look that great, but their defense still kept them in that game somewhat for a little while. I like those 2 teams. We would recommend if you are in a situation.
Dolphins are playing the Titans, and that's a Monday night game, I believe. So that's a good game too.
Will Levis has turned the ball over every game.
Yep. And
Rams,
and he
Chicago.
gets sacked. And then Rams, Chicago.
Both quarterbacks getting sacked and turn the ball over.
Yep. And so you got to like both those matchups from a defensive standpoint. They're low owned, both those defenses. So go and pick them up. Do yourselves a favor. If you do play with the defense, don't forget about your defense. All right, they score a lot of points sometimes, and if you can get one of those guys, it's a huge boost, especially if you are barely making it through some injuries that you're dealing with. So
yeah, especially with some of the surprising defensive outputs that should be top tier defenses not doing that.
Yeah,
Cowboys.
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the end of our waiver episode here. Thanks for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button. We'll be dropping our Thursday episode with our starts and sits for the weekend. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.